Hey everybody, Ed Homewood, Old Guy Hi-Fi channel. Hope everyone's doing well today. Today we're going to talk about a really interesting pair of stand mount speakers from PMC, the Prodigy Ones. Sit back, relax, and we'll talk about these really beautiful kind of studio monitor speakers. The PMC Prodigy One loudspeaker is a really interesting little stand mount loudspeaker or bookshelf or a desktop, as I used them on a stand and on my desktop. They retail for $1,700 for the pair. If you want, they do offer an optional grill for $140. Specifications are, speaker is rated from 50 hertz to 25,000 hertz. It's 87.5 dB sensitive. It is a 6 ohm nominal impedance. And the crossover frequency between the midwoofer and the tweeter is 1700 hertz. Now, they use a 5 1/4 inch, what they call natural fiber cone woofer with it has a very nice butyl rubber surround. PMC builds a lot of their drivers for their studio monitors. We'll talk about it in a second. And I believe this is one of the drivers they build in-house. Hands off to a nice 1 inch soft dome tweeter. Again, this may be something they build in-house. The cabinet is really solid. It is made of high density fiberboard, really well constructed. It's all CNC and precision machined and assembled. There is no veneer or anything like that. It's a matte finish. You can detect no seams in this thing at all. It's really beautifully done. So let's talk about who PMC is. PMC started out in the early 80s. There was a couple of recording guys who were kind of dissatisfied with the sound of studio monitors in those days, and some of them could be really bad. I've heard some of those older studio monitors. And they thought they could build a better mousetrap, so they did. And their first speaker actually was really interesting in that it incorporated a transmission line, as do, I think, most of, if not all of, PMC's current offering in Pro and in the consumer side. So it was a huge success. Right away, the BBC bought into it, and they make studio monitors used at all the best sound recording studios, all of the best film recording and editing studios worldwide. Very highly regarded, used by famous people like Stevie Wonder and folks like that, who prize that really good sound quality. So it is really very much a true to the source, very neutral, very accurate sounding studio monitor. Probably the best in the world. And I mean, that's not just me saying it. I've seen some amazing reviews of their studio product. So this is part of their consumer line, and it uses an advanced transmission line. Now let's talk about what a transmission line does. There are kind of three basically what we're used to boxed kind of speaker configurations. One is a sealed box or acoustic suspension, where the woofer plays into a sealed box with a fixed amount of air inside. Now that fixed amount of air is really nice, and it can act as a spring to control woofer movement, but the problem is a woofer puts out as much sound coming off the front of it as it does coming off the back. So the problem is all that sound coming off the back of the driver in a sealed box has to either be absorbed or accounted for or whatever, and it's wasted energy. And so the way to get around that was what's called a Helmholtz resonator, or a ported enclosure. Now, ported enclosures, the diameter of the port and the length of the tube in the port, or the diameter of the slot, the length of it, so forth, all of those things are set up around a tuning frequency that is complementary to whatever the specifications are for the driver they're using. So let's give an example. If you had a speaker in similar size to this, the port might be tuned to, let's say, 50 hertz. Now, what happens is we're fine down to 50 hertz. Once we get below 50 hertz, the port contains a volume of air. Air has mass. That volume of air works in conjunction with the back of the woofer or the woofer itself to help control cone movement, because it provides some resistance to the backward movement of the cone, but it also takes that energy from the backward movement of the cone and gets it out of the box and helps enhance the overall bass response of the speaker itself. What happens is if you get below that tuning frequency, the air mass in the port stops functioning and it just becomes useless, and the speaker plays as if it were in free air. which means then the woofer's unloaded, it's prone to distortion and all kinds of other issues. Now, transmission line solves a lot of those problems because you can tune a transmission line, and PMC uses what they call ATL, or Advanced Transmission Line Tuning. They can tune the transmission line to a broader range of frequencies rather than a specific frequency. And because, and there'll be cutouts and pictures of the insides of these things going on while I'm talking about it, because the transmission line is a labyrinth, it slows the air down so that it provides a better spring, and again operates over a wider range of frequencies. And then the labyrinth itself is filled with a absorption material that is of PMC's own design, which then absorbs all the high and mid frequencies coming off the back of the woofer. So really all you get is those bass frequencies that you're after coming out. The other thing that the labyrinth does is it makes sure that the energy coming off the back of the speaker when it exits the box is in phase with the woofer. So they're both moving in conjunction with one another, and it gives you a good, really good bass reinforcement. So in the case of the PMC, now you guys will remember I did the Neil Blanchard design MLTL6, which is a large stand mount transmission line, and that's tuned to a much lower frequency because it's a bigger box. These, obviously being a compact size, they want to get better bass response than you normally expect from a speaker this size, and it does. And so the transmission line is an excellent choice for that. But the nice thing about it is, in its size, it gives you better bass than you would expect from a 5 1/4 inch woofer. It's cleaner, it's higher definition. It is really much more articulate in the low frequencies down to, obviously it's 3 dB down point at 50 hertz, but still it plays cleanly down to probably a 6 dB down point, somewhere in the 40 range, maybe high 30s, and it's really good that you get a good sense of that extension. And we'll talk about that more when I talk about sound quality. Also, too, with the laminar technology they use for the transmission line and the port, the exit of the transmission line, it smooths the airflow out so you don't get any chuffing. And it really just, all you're getting is that energy off the back of the speaker in conjunction with the front of the speaker, and get a good bass reinforcement. So you get a higher maximum bass output with much better timing and much better dynamics, and these do a really good job with that. So let's talk about how I tested them. Well, the Prodigy ones saw double duty. I used them here in the main room, and I also used them on my desktop a lot. In the main room, I used them on stands and sat a normal listening distance away, and then I brought them in a little closer and did some near-field listening, and of course that's how you listen to them on my desktop. In the studio, most of the time I fed them from the Advanced Paris A7. I did use the linear tube audio Z80 for a short period of time, but most of the time it was the Advanced Paris A7. And briefly I used it with the new TAC 505 integrated amp, which I've got over here, review coming soon. So on the Advanced Paris, that has a really good, warm, lush, natural sound, that amplifier, and it complemented these really, really well. Now on the desktop, I used them again on my desktop, but I powered them two ways. I used a pair of Schiit G horns running mono. I also used the 3E Audio A7 little Class D desktop amplifier being fed by the FIO K9 AKM, and that was a really good combination. That amplifier's got some good damping and good control, and they sounded quite good with this. Now, on my desktop, the speakers are within just a few inches of the wall that my desk sits against. So I did get a little extra bass reinforcement there, and it was really, really good. So that's how I tested them. Let's talk about some of the music I used. Well, the first album I'm going to recommend it's a favorite of mine, Chris Isaak, Heart-Shaped World. This is a beautiful album. It was recorded in June of 1989. I think it was released in late 89 or early 90. It blew up when the song from it, Wicked Game, was featured in the David Lynch movie Wild at Heart in, I think, the summer of 1990. This was a monster album for Chris. It really launched his career. It is really interesting. It was recorded, by the way, at Skywalker Sound, which is, of course, part of Skywalker Ranch and Lucasfilm and all that. And that studio is really well known for being super well equipped and having great acoustics and everything else, because that's where they do all of the sound mixing for all the Lucasfilm films. So high-end, really high-end studio. The album is interesting, and it kind of blends some rockabilly pop, a little blues, It very, kind of almost kind of and I hate to use the term surf rock, but it's kind of got a little bit of that Beach Boys kind of guitar sound to it, that Glenn Campbell Beach Boys kind of guitar sound to it. Chris Isaak is an excellent guitarist and a great vocalist. The record itself is extraordinarily well recorded. I must say, though, there is an awful lot of reverb and a lot of kind of processing going on to give it that echoey, atmospheric, kind of ethereal sort of character to the sound, certainly in his voice. Now, he has a great voice, and it's engaging as all get at. The interesting thing about that kind of ethereal or kind of echoey sort of sound character to it is it kind of encourages you to kind of listen in a little deeper. And like I said, he's got a great voice. His guitar work is excellent. All the musicians on this recording are excellent. The album is really well recorded. All the instruments sound the way they should. Again, maybe a little bit of extra reverb. I don't get the sense that anybody was in the studio at the same time. I think everybody probably recorded their stuff separately or in booths, maybe together, but in booths. But a great, really cool sound. The neat thing about this album is it's kind of a song about heartbreak, a longing, unrequited love, melancholy, make me dream about you, kind of broken-hearted sort of stuff. It's really, really, really interesting. It is, I don't know, it's got great bass, really good bass. Just a good, rich, full sound. I really enjoy it. My favorite track on it is Wrong to Love You. So again, highly recommended. Chris Isaak, Heart-Shaped World. Well, the next one is we're going to go off the ranch a bit. This is a band that I knew growing up here in Chicago. They're a Chicago band. It is Shadowfax, and the album is called The Odd Get Even. Now, Shadowfax is a Grammy Award-winning. They would have fallen into the category back in the 90s when this was released. This is actually August of 1990. It was the release date on this. They would have fallen into that New Age category, which was kind of something new coming up. New Age had been around for a long time. Like John Clemmer on the album Touch. A lot of people called it fern rock, that kind of stuff, or wind chime rock. Anyway, this is really interesting in that Shadowfax was a large group of folks in the band and a lot of different instruments. So you have some really interesting influences. You've got some really complex rhythms. You've got some kind of Middle Eastern themes. You've got some African themes. You've got some Asian elements. There's a lot of violin in it. I think Chuck Greenberg, one of the founders of the band, was a violinist. And it's all captured really beautifully. Now, this was recorded at Sunset Sound Studios in Hollywood, which, of course, is well known for their really good acoustics and really good equipment. There are a couple of really good tracks on this one. It's very interesting. You got to give this one a good, deep listen and honestly give it a fair shot. It's not everybody's cup of tea, but I really, really like this. And it kind of introduced me back in 90, because I got the album when it first came out, into wanting to explore more kind of world music sorts of sounds. So for me, there's a couple of really good tracks on it. There's one called Oasis, which is really kind of a dreamy, atmospheric piece with kind of shimmery keyboards and a lot of intricate melodies in it. I really enjoy that one. And then The Changing of the Garden, that's a real dynamic track with a mix of acoustic and electronic textures. And it kind of is a progressive sort of sound to it. Kind of, the band was progressive, but it had a kind of progressive sound to it. And then the next one is 1001 Nights. And this is a Middle Eastern inspired composition. It kind of showcases the band's skill in blending traditional world music and with modern instrumentation. Really rewarding listen to. I can't recommend this album enough. There's a lot of great Shadowfax albums, but this was a real standout. This was a real breakthrough for them, because Windham Hill Records, which it was released on, at this point in 1990, had some resources to be able to market their stuff much better, and Shadowfax was one of the ones that got highlighted by the record label. So again, Shadowfax, The Odd Get Even. Well, typically, I would be talking about a classical album as my last album usually in these reviews, but I'm not gonna. This was an album that really is a standout for me for a very, very long time. I remember when I got my original pressing of it in 1974. This was a landmark, standout, absolute legend of an album. It is Robin Trower's Bridge of Sighs. Now, Robin Trower is an amazing guitarist. He started with Procol Harum. You'll remember if you go back and look in the catalog. This was really a landmark album, really probably considered the finest, one of the finest 70s blues rock albums ever. It was released in April of '74 on Chrysalis Records. And it was produced by Matt Fisher, who was, Procol Harum was a bandmate of Robin's at Procol Harum. It was recorded at Air Studios in London in late '73 and early '74. Now, Air Studios is famous because it was founded by George Martin, obviously the Beatles producer. And it was known at the time, and still is, I believe they're still around. I'd have to look. If it isn't, I'll put it down here. We're known for absolutely the best top quality equipment. Everybody, all of the manufacturers of recording gear and studio gear wanted to be in Air Studios because obviously George Martin's reputation. So really good technology, very cutting edge at the time, really good acoustics, really good engineering equipment, just really, really nice. And they were able to really capture Robin Trower's tone. Now, he plays a Fender Strat, and he gets a sound out of that is just absolutely remarkable. Now, some other stand-up musicians on the album were James Dewar, who was the vocalist and bass, and his voice is amazing. We'll talk about my favorite song on the album, which features him just wonderful. And then you had Reg Isidore on drums. Trower had established himself as one of the leading rock guitarists and true, kind of prog rock guitarist. This is actually, Bridge of Sighs was his second album. He had another one called Twice Removed from Yesterday, which didn't break the charts as much as this one did. This was huge. This was widely celebrated by critics and reviewers, especially like Rolling Stone magazine, for kind of a Hendrix-inspired guitar work. Real evocative and emotive lyrics, and the interplay between Trower's guitar and guitar lines and James Dewar's voice, which is just amazing. Again, we'll talk about it. So he uses a Fender Stratocaster, and he used some really interesting effects like a univibe and overdrive, obviously, to create some distortion. And it really creates this kind of very lush atmospheric sound. Very interesting for 1974. You got to remember in 1974, things like, what was that Captain Tennille song, Chipmunk Love, or something, I don't forget what it is, Muskrat Love was out. So this was a real contrast. And this was a really good, for rock diehard fans, this was an amazing album. Now, my favorite track on it is Too Rolling Stoned. And James Dewar's vocals on this are just phenomenal. It's so deep. So, they described his vocals as being whiskey soaked. Apparently he was a party animal, but his voice is so textured and so deep. And the recording quality for 1974 on this album is exceptional. It was remixed a couple of times. If you can find it, and the link I'll have in the video description for these albums, the link to this one I think is a remaster from the 2015 or 2005, something like that. It's a good remaster. It's not boosted bass and overly compressed. I have an original, my OG pressing still of this on vinyl, and it is more dynamic on the album than it is on the stream. But again, it's been remastered, and a lot of times, let me just take an editorial moment here. To me, a lot of times albums get remastered not in an effort to improve the sound quality, but in an effort to get more money for the artist and the record label. But anyway, so the remaster on this one was very good. This is an exceptional album. This was an absolute benchmark. It was it set a standard in the time that was just really, really, it influenced so many other recordings at the time. It reached number 7 on the Billboard charts here in the US, and it remained on the charts for 31 weeks. For a prog rock, kind of heavy guitar-oriented rock album to last that long on the charts was just amazing. And again, it was a benchmark album. And it is frequently referred to as probably one of the best blues rock albums of all time, period. And it obviously solidified Trower's reputation as a musician. I had a chance to see him perform live in 1976 in Philadelphia, and it was awesome. And of course, he played a lot of stuff off of Bridge of Sighs. So one of my absolute touchstone, benchmark, love it to death kind of albums, Robin Trower's Bridge of Sighs. So let's talk about the sound quality of these speakers. So how did the Prodigy Ones perform? Well, they performed very, very well. Good bass response. On the stands in the big room, listening to them as I would a normal stand mount speaker, you know, sitting about 10 or so feet away, they did a decent job of filling the room. Yeah, they were a little light on bass, but then so would any bookshelf speaker in this size. I will say they did give me a little better bass response than I would have expected from a 5 1/4 inch two-way in such a diminutive cabinet size. Really good. Great imaging, very smooth response. Now, this speaker is absolutely neutral. I don't think it has very much character of its own, other than, than a little fuller bass response and a little more nuanced bass response than you would normally expect from a speaker in this size. But at $1,700 for the pair, it better perform. It's an awful lot of money for this size speaker. And I don't know if I'm going to pass judgment on whether or not it's worth it. But anyway, they performed excellent. Huge image. Very good. The mid-range on these is beautiful. You can tell this comes from a studio monitor company. Very natural, very neutral, very true to the source. You got a lot of however the quality of the recording was, came through. Whatever the quality of the amplification was, came through. So they were very, very neutral to the source and very accurate. No sins. No too warm, no too cold, no fatigue, no stridency, no bloated bass, none of that. Just absolutely dead neutral and very extended up on the top end. Their imaging was outstanding, and I would say that that's probably, for me, was the very neutral balance, and the imaging were the standout characteristics of the speaker. It threw a very big soundstage. Good height, good width, very focused center image, good depth, really good. Now, all the albums I used or that I recommended in this are all studio recordings, so there is no imaging there that wasn't manufactured by the engineer. But I did listen to some classical music, and I did listen to some operatic music through these, and I got a really good sense of the space the orchestra or the performance was occurring in. So it had good depth and good sense of air and room space. It is, as I said, it's a very accurate, very neutral to the source speaker. So whatever you put in is kind of what you got out. I was very impressed by its articulation, its speed, its ability to reveal detail. It did very, very good. Vocals were very well rendered. Mid-range is probably the bass is a bit of a standout feature because you don't expect it for this size of a speaker, but the mid-range is absolutely one. I think the party piece of this speaker is how accurate it is from, kind of the lower mid bass all the way through to really, kind of the low end of the treble range. Piano sounded real natural. All the instruments sounded real natural. Again, very, very neutral, very accurate sounding. Very much what you would expect as a studio monitor. And on the desktop and near field listening, it was a really rewarding experience. I really enjoyed them. My only gripe again would be, and it's just because I'm a cheapskate, is I think they're expensive. But the build quality, I think, justifies that. The sound quality, if you're into a real studio monitor sound and you want that accuracy and you want no coloration from the speaker itself, yeah, then it becomes these become a really compelling product to consider for your system. So anyway, the Prodigy One from PMC speaker, really excellent, well built. Love the way they sounded, and I love the way they sounded, especially with the advanced Paris A7. That kind of gave them a little. The character of that amplifier came through really, really nicely and made it very enjoyable. So I give it a good recommendation. I just wish they were less expensive, that's all. Well, hopefully you could give this video a recommendation and give me a like and a subscribe. And if you wish to support the channel, there is a thank you button at the bottom of the video window. There will also be a membership link in the pinned comment and in the video description. In the video description will be title links to the 3 albums I recommended in this review. There will also be a link to the PMC website for more information. I don't have an affiliate relationship with them, but in case you want to dig in and find out more about their transmission line technology, there's a lot of really good information on the website. So that's that. There are some affiliate links in the video description. You guys understand how those work. There are my playlists. There is a link to the community playlist page. Please check it out. There's some wonderful music that you guys have submitted there. Please comment. Let me know. Are you into the accurate studio monitor kind of sound? Do you like something with a little warmth or a little character of its own. Share with me that. Now, one thing I need to say is, and thank you guys so much, the channel's growing beyond my wildest dreams, and it is getting harder and harder for me to respond to every comment individually. If you have specific questions about equipment, I would encourage you to go back and look. I've set up some playlists, video playlists of speakers, DACs, amps, things like that. Double check to see if I've reviewed the product. If I haven't reviewed the product, I can't render an opinion, and I'm not going to bullshit you and make something up just to sound smart. People think I do that already. Anyway, so check there first before you ask a question, and I can't always tell you what's going to pair well with something else. Again, if I haven't reviewed it, I can't render an opinion. But I would love to hear your comments on the music I suggest. I'd love to hear your comments on, the video or the product itself. So please comment. So I think I've run out of things to say. I can ramble on, can't I? So please like, subscribe, comment. If you want to, you can follow me on Instagram. That's it. My name's Ed Homewood. This is the Old Guy Hi-Fi channel, and it's now your duty to yourself to sit back and listen to some beautiful early 70s prog rock from Robin Trower. That album is so cool. Give it a listen and let me know what you think. Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it. I hope you have a wonderful day.
Dreams she shares with you. Feel the rhythm.